I'm gonna put some manuals in here. I did last year and it looked really nice. There's some alyssum in here that I put in last year at this time, and it's doing great. You know, sometimes when you put a plant in its happy place, boy, it will reward you and exceed your expectations. I had no idea that alyssum would go through an entire summer here. It went through the winter, it had snow last year, and it went through all of that just fine. And I mean, look, it's still blooming profusely. And the funny thing is this area doesn't even have a dedicated sprinkler. That's really crazy. But anyway, I've been wanting to redo this area. I've been needing to. I'm gonna redo this whole bed. You know, and it needs some sprucing up. Everything that I'm gonna put in here is gonna go through March, possibly April. Should go through May, but I try not to push it too much so we don't have any like ugly gaps. I tucked a little fairy garden in the corner right there. Right here, there's a little fairy garden. I'm gonna spruce that up a little bit. I'm gonna take all these rocks out, all the edge out, clean them up, redo it, and straighten things out because I think that pretty pink rock is leaning a little bit. Okay, so one of the things that I do if I'm going to totally deconstruct an area like this, the best thing, even though I'm going to put mulch, and mulch does suppress weeds, you have to consider the seed bank that I'm about to totally stir up, because this has not been amended or anything in years, and it is not worth fighting that seed bank for the next 2 years to avoid putting pre-emergent. So this is one of the times I will for sure use pre-emergent. Let me clarify. Pre-emergent and post-emergent is referencing weed management terms. And when it comes to weed management, you have to tackle it from both directions. You need to tackle it when you see them, and that would be post-emergence. And then, you know, to get ahead of them is before they emerge, before they sprout, and that is pre-emergent. So there's two different types of herbicides that are focused on treating them based on the conditions. You're either gonna treat before the weeds emerge or after, or both. And when you're doing weed management, it's really a delicate balance of both. I use much less than the recommended applications for everything. And I've also developed my own strategies for applying these. You know, granular, for instance, is only rated to last 4 months. But if it's applied correctly and even less than what's recommended, I can get a good 6 months out of it, depending on the conditions. There are times, however, that I do, you know, like if we get a lot of heavy rain or if there's a lot of traffic in the area, foot traffic, dogs, kids that are constantly disturbing the dirt, you know, so that's when you have to definitely abide by the more recommended frequency. However, certain conditions don't always require the amount that's recommended. So I always start off with at least half of what's recommended and see if that works. And if that works, the next time I may even bump it down a little bit. And if it doesn't work, I bump it up. So I kind of tailor, and this is for every application in every area in every garden, every single spot. You know, the different areas within the same garden even have different tolerance levels of what they'll need for these types of treatments. So, but I do believe that weed management itself, that term entails the delicate balance of utilizing all those tools at the appropriate times to minimize the need for them all the time, if that makes sense. Because when you have everything applied in a way that is actually functioning for that spot, then the demand will consistently go down. If you follow certain practices like not disturbing the soil, or knowing when you are disturbing the soil, you're taking the little extra measures, those types of understandings are what's going to make gardening a better success and way less weed drama in general to deal with. So that's what brought this up, is that I know I'm going to be disturbing this dirt, and nothing stirs up weeds more than disturbing the seed bank. And the seed bank is all the dormant seeds that are laying just below the soil surface. They are waiting for me to bring them up to the surface so they can get sunlight and then start coming up. So basically, if you disturb the dirt, and even when you pull weeds, you are planting new ones. I tell everybody, for every one weed that you pull, you're planting 1,000. That's just the way it is, and it's called a seed bank. So those are terms that I will use very frequently, and that I think just kind of took for granted that, you know, people are going to understand what I'm talking about. But I just wanted to really make sure that I clarify for anybody who wants to understand weed management. They're experienced in on every level from acres to square footage size. And I'm always going to choose the least destructive and the lowest risk methods for any type of applications of any chemicals, whether they're organic or not. I'm always going to want to use the very least amount possible, because I don't want any environmental conditions to get used to that. I would rather just kind of create the conditions that want to support my my goals naturally as possible. So it's always an effort to move forward to using less. I don't ever want to become dependent 100% on using any product to make things look good, period. So just because you'll see me use these products, that doesn't mean I'm relying on them constantly all the time, and then I'm just introducing those to the environment, because I am very careful about where I apply them, and a lot of them have very strict rules, and I always make sure that I read up and familiarize myself with every single application restriction and requirement that is on the manufacturer's label. So that's another thing. They all have different limitations. As some of them have limitations to how many times a year they can be applied and such a thing. Anyway, I really hope that clarifies some of the terms that I use, and that it also inspires you to learn more about weed management and become more knowledgeable and comfortable in developing practices that are along the similar principles of using the least amount as possible and introducing as least amount to the environment as possible, at the same time achieving your goals and working towards creating the environment that can achieve that as naturally as possible. And I'm just trimming the back a little bit because I need to situate the stone a little bit. I feel like it's sunken down. I know it needs to be buried to an extent so it stands up, but I want to make it at least even because I feel like it's leaning over. It's really heavy. Oh, is that a snake? Oh, it's a pretty lizard. Oh, that's another thing. Be aware of critters when you're moving rocks around. To me, they have the right to be there. Anyway, somebody asked me one time, where do the weeds, why did, he would come out, he would pull all these weeds, and then of course 3 days later, a bunch would be grown, and he just didn't understand where they came from. He was like, where do they come from? So the seed bank is one place, because they're just there, they've been there for years. The way that the seed bank gets created is, Mother Nature. That is her job. By nature, seeds are designed to distribute themselves. That's just the way it's made, and it was intended to be that way. Some people say, well, doesn't mulch do the same thing? Doesn't it stop weeds from sprouting? And mulch suppresses weeds from sprouting, and a pre-emergent granular treatment will prevent weeds from sprouting. So that's the key difference there, is prevention versus suppression. And if suppression is good enough for your environment, by all means, there's no reason to not just rely on mulch. In my situation, when I'm taking care of 14 different gardens, I can't dedicate all my time to managing the weeds that come up. The clients don't want that. They don't want to pay me to come there and just pull up the weeds that weren't suppressed. They are paying for a different type of service. And it's not a productive way for me to spend my time. But in your garden, if you're just taking care of your own garden and you have already evolved and created an environment in your dirt and your soil, and your weeds are manageable by just using mulch, then just continue with what you're doing. There's no reason to change. But if you're having a problem and you are exploring the idea of a different way to manage your weed problems, and you really want to implement true weed management for long-term success, this is something that you would need to consider. Now I'm just going to kind of see if I can give it a little better look back here and share kind of how I've situated the stones. Russian sage is tilted a little bit because it was laying down, but it will right itself. The sun will let it know exactly which way it needs to point, so that will right itself. And I'm just setting these there for, and I think I'm gonna try to get away with not having stones right here. I feel like it just kind of flows a little better. And then I need to work in this light fixture. I would like it to be more out of the way. It's always been kind of on the edge right here, which seems a little awkward. That's a nice, snug little layout right there. So Now it gives me a little more room for this dirt to get spread out that otherwise would be toppling over the surface, the top, by the time I add the mulch. I've never even mulched this. I've been here about 3 years, never mulched this yet. I think I might have drizzled a little bit on top, but anyway. I just want to remove this stone. I don't like it. I think it's too big. I think it's off scale. And I want to be able to put some of this dirt right here. Oh, dang it. I guess my bag of mulch is leaking water. So let me put a hole in it. Yes, that's already an improvement to that spot too. And then I'm gonna fill that spot with mulch right there just to make sure there's no harm. And then I'm gonna put mulch on that area where I dumped the alyssum seeds back here. And I'll have to use my blower because I am totally drowning out the little fairy garden. Now, the time for a little pre-emergent. Okay, well maybe this rock would be a better fit for right here. There. Okay, that's a little better. Now let's get some plants. Keeping this area really feminine. Put this right here. Try to keep the taller things together. So I don't want to hide this, but I do like to support it. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna try to tuck this behind it, this beside it, like that. And then come in with some kales, something like this. And then maybe some pansies in the front, in that spot. But I think that works. Now I just need to thin out this, this Mexican petunia bush right here is super dense. Let me see if I have a knife to carve through that. Now I'm just gonna see if I can get a good chunk of it out. I don't have to get it all out. I mean, these will recover no problem, but I want to have enough room to put these pansies. Oh, this is a good example about watering techniques that if you don't do your preliminary watering correctly for plants that are in pots, the roots aren't really getting water. Can you see the shades there? So that's really off topic for this video, but I just wanted to point that out because this is a very common thing that's happening in all pots. So there's actually, you need to go through 3 steps to make sure you get the watering good so the whole root base can actually benefit from the water. Just spacing them out a little bit so they're closer to the edge. I have a video about why I'm tearing these plants apart when I plant them, and I'll put a link to that in the description. And for those who don't know, and we do have rain coming later today, so I may not even, if it rains before I'm done here and I'm having to run out because I'm getting rained out, I won't need to water these in. So I think that's a good improvement for this little area. Let me get all of this blown clean and then do the final mulch. Okay, so I'm going to just lightly water that in and then put the fairy garden things back. I just added this one day because I didn't think it was a good place for a plant because this stone would block the water, but that's how I'm arranging it. So it hasn't quite dried out yet since I've watered everything in, but it still looks much nicer than it did when I got here. So I hope you'll leave any questions or suggestions in the comment section below, and that you'll join me again next time for warm climate garden beauty.